Would you go help her, maybe?
Yeah.
That'd be great. If you
Yeah,
could.
I can, sure.
I'll give us a few minutes before we call to order. We've been watching enough of the council meetings.
Spaces up against the wall over here. Sure. Mr. Allen doesn't mind if people sit behind him, I don't think. Okay, I brought two. You've got four.
Do you have it live as well? Okay.
Brian, you don't see this.
I'll go ahead and call us to order at 6:31.
Mr. Adler?
Here.
Mayor Carney? Here. Mr. Harriman?
Here.
Mr. Jaskowitz?
Here.
Mr. Swain?
Here. All right, first on the agenda this evening, I have approval of minutes from our January 19th meeting. I think we need to probably update the agenda to show 2022. Do we have any feedback or commentary regarding those minutes? All right, I will make a motion to approve the January meeting minutes as is.
Second. Mr. Adler?
Yes.
Mayor Carney?
Yes.
Mr. Harriman?
Stain, I guess, wasn't here.
Mr. Jaskowitz?
Yes.
Mr. Swain?
Yes. Next up, communication zoning, Ms. Brill.
I just wanted to update the commission. We did have the developer reach out from the Hoffbauer. They've made slight adjustments based on some engineering calculations for retention to add another retention basin to those plans. Something that we can approve administratively, did not substantially impact open space requirements nor the layout of the development. Slight modifications to the community park area that's maintained by the HOA, from that being substantial. And then just wanted to remind everybody later on in the meeting, I have a placeholder for a discussion. We'll talk about the work session. We got some logistics that I just want to talk through and plans for that that Mr. Adler and I have talked about. But other than that, that's all I have.
Thank you. BZA, Mr. Jaskowitz.
We have not had a meeting, and there is not a meeting scheduled for, it was supposed to be scheduled for last night, but we didn't have a meeting.
Wow.
So
When was the last time that's happened?
it's been infrequent, to be honest.
Mayor Carney.
Yes, January 26th, I attended the Plain State Business Association meeting and updated businesses on the zoning code rewrite and our administrator search update, which we will be, it is open for receiving applications for potential administrators, and we're hoping the first week of April that we will be in first round interviews. And that evening, I also attended the JA strategic planning meeting, and we were looking at each individual building and their needs and how does it fit into the community in the next 5 to 10 years with the growth that we are seeing. So I'm appreciative of being a part of that. And also on February 1st, welcomed WARPC members to our administration building and heard community updates. And Ms. Lupton and Ms. Brill were integral about making sure that we host those meetings here in our community. And just want to let everybody know that we have also Ms. Haley Lupton and Ms. Taylor Brill and myself met with Jerome Township, City of Dublin, Marysville, Union County Economic Development, and talked about a little bit about the 33 corridor and how we're all working together on the growth that's coming to our community. So trying to get on the same page and having some of those meetings. Also welcome township trustees from Jerome Township and Darby Township, as well as Madison County Commissioner Chris Wallace. Today we talked about the sustainability for our community in the Darby. So that's all I have.
Perfect. I would like to amend our agenda for tonight, and I'll provide a little commentary on that. So I would like to move the public comment after our old business, which is our deliberation of the application that we received last year for the parcel on Rickard Road. The reason for that, to explain to this group, right, is since that public hearing was held in December and January and is now closed, for our deliberation, we can only take into account any commentary provided during that public hearing. And so I know we have a number of members here that are here to discuss that. You absolutely will be able to. It will be after we discuss and we take a vote. That is because we're required within 45 days of closing that public hearing to either provide a recommendation for or against the application to council. And then from there, council will actually hold public hearings as well. They have 2 public hearings, right, in consecutive meetings, and then in the third is when they would deliberate and vote, correct?
Sure, so they'll have 2 readings of an ordinance, and then they'll have 1 public hearing before
Gotcha.
the final reading.
Correct. And so I would welcome anyone who's here to provide public commentary to take advantage of that as well. The way that this commission works is that we do hear and we make recommendations to council. Our vote does not determine whether or not the application is approved or denied tonight. So just to clarify that for all parties here. For those that are going to give public comment, when you come up to give public comment, please give your name and address. That way we can make sure it's accounted for as well in our meeting minutes. And I think that is everything we wanted to provide around that, correct? Okay. So next up on our agenda is our old business, application PZ 21-26. I'll go ahead and bring that up here. Mr. Moncrief, do you want to provide just your feedback that you had provided to the council out of our last, or to the commission out of our last meeting?
Yeah, are you okay with me standing over here?
Yeah, you can stand there, that's fine.
Okay, yeah, thanks again for having us. My name is Craig Moncrief, I'm the attorney for the applicant. We are requesting your recommendation of approval for the rezoning and preliminary development plan for the Ohio Remix concrete facility. This involves about 11 and a half acres out of a 13-acre parcel. I thought we had a really good and thorough discussion last month, going over the site plan, over the proposed rezoning, solid topics, EPA, things like that, running through that, and there's obviously a lot of questions that they want to run through, some comments, so to give you kind of an idea of what we've done. I talked with Paul Lafayette, spoke with him regarding water and sewer questions, and I prepared a memo that kind of goes through what we have discussed as an opportunity. Obviously, this is talking about a property that's 2,600 feet from any public water and sewer infrastructure. My understanding is there's actually some capacity issues currently with the sewer. So what we're proposing, and Paul said, it's totally fine. It's something that we've done in other jurisdictions. Is an agreement to basically, or it'll be private utilities up and until the infrastructure reaches the property, is close proximity to the property. That way, it's viewed more as a temporary endeavor. If this can be done via deed restriction, something along those lines. That's what we're proposing as kind of a solution to that. Like I said, I talked to Paul about that. I talked to Doug briefly about that. They see no issues with that proposal. Additionally, we've provided some letters of support. I'll give you a list here. So, City of Bell Fountain, who Ohio Ready Mix has worked with, the storage facility across the street on Rickard Road, Madison County Chamber of Commerce, the property owners to the south, a few neighbors of the Huntsville facility, and also a compliance letter from the EPA involving the Huntsville facility. We also received some additional questions from the village engineer on January 30th. We met in person with the village of Taylor and the engineer on February 8th, and we've been working to work through those, and I think we are at least answering questions. Obviously, this is a process. We're still going through that. We added, I know there was discussions about what's the architecture of the plant. We've added detail to that. We provided those plans. Bill also did a color rendering that kind of was it's small, but we do have additional renderings for that. I know that was a request as well. And some additional floodplain information. Bill provided that. So that's what we've gone through since our last meeting. With that, Bill, is there anything you want to add?
Sure. I can go up there, point of my renderings. So the last meeting, you requested that I revise the outside architecture of the building that's going to enclose the concrete plant, so it's totally enclosed. So this would be the facade of the building that would be facing 42. So the only open part of the building is this square up here where the conveyor feeds the sand and gravel into the plant. Plant's totally inside, and these are the silos. This is the rear portion that would be facing the rear of the property. Here's the back side of the plant, and this is the dispatch and plant operator office. And we put wainscot on that. Dress this building up with some trim and make it look like windows and barn doors. This would be the facade facing the south. Again, you can see this is the concrete plant building, and we put some trim and fake doors on it. This is the office building for the plant, the dispatch, and it's got the wainscot on all the sides, windows. And this is the side facing north. And what we changed on this was we again dressed it up, and we have also now put siding on the bottom part of the silo, so the trucks will be totally enclosed when they're getting batched, and you won't be able to see anything of that mechanical infrastructure. So the other question was, we had contacted EPA and what their stance was on it, and we met with the village engineer prior to this, and Taylor, and after that, we had another conversation with EPA. So first we contacted John Owen, who's the permit specialist for this area. Then he put us in contact with his supervisors, Mr. Isaac Robinson and Mr. Michael Galloway. And they would be the ones that would actually be handling this permit process. So the permit process is pretty extensive. It takes about 8 months, and we would be applying for 4 permits. NPDES, post-construction, 1 for construction, an anti-degradation permit for our effluent going into the Darby, and then an air quality permit. And how this works is they give us the guidelines. We design the stormwater according to those guidelines. We turn our plans and calculations into them. They have an extensive review. They issue a draft permit. They have a public hearing. Community's allowed input. Then they can either amend their request to us, tighten up the regs a little bit. We have to redesign our site, or it's okay, and they'll issue the permit. And then with all these permits, there's a monitoring process. So it's just not they issue the permit and we go about our merry way. You have to monitor the water that you're dumping in. Air quality standards have to be kept up and monitored. So each one of these permits has a monitoring segment to it as long as the plant's operating. So in today's world of engineering, we'll be able to make their standards. It's just a matter of getting to that point once they give them all to us. Our stormwater has 3 components. Like we said, we have one component where the water that's being used to wash the concrete trucks is recycled and never gets into the watershed. Then we have our stormwater system with catch basins. And then we have a bioswale that's required in the Big Darby area that takes your stormwater, because they want a percentage of that stormwater to percolate into the ground and recharge the aquifer. And that's what the bioswale is for. This site is a good site for a bioswale because there's about 4 to 8 feet of clay over a big, deep vein of sand. So that water will perk through that sand, and that's nature's way of cleaning it. But there won't be, much in it. It's stormwater. So So that was a question on the EPA. And Craig addressed the on-site septic and sewer, so. And there's also a section in the Ohio Revised Code that would allow for us to have on-site sewage and water until they're brought to us within 300 feet, then we'd be mandated to connect. So,
Thank you.
all right.
Yeah, I believe that answers all the questions we had coming out of last meeting, correct?
What about the traffic onto Rickard Road and 42?
That was noted in staff
It is
report.
in staff report.
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
That they had, because that's Jerome Township, that they had to get with the township on that.
yeah, we've contacted ODOT. ODOT says that they built the road according to ODOT specs, but they turned it over to the village. I talked to Jeff Stout, Union County Engineer. He says he has no jurisdiction over it, and the township says they have no jurisdiction over it. So that's the best information I have at this point. Everybody involved has been contacted. So I will say, because it's built to ODOT standards, it's built to take the weight of those trucks. Those cement trucks, unlike a dump truck or a flatbed, can't be overloaded. The drum's built for whatever its capacity is, and the truck's designed to carry illegal loads. Will never be overloaded. So the road, from a structural standpoint, can take the traffic.
So then, just so I understand correctly, that feedback was actually from ODOT, not from Jerome Township, as it was noted in the report that we received. Is that correct?
Which information? Because we've contacted all parties concerned, ODOT, Union County, and the township.
So the communication that we received is that Jerome Township provided approval for the access on the road.
Yes.
What I'm hearing from you is that it was actually ODOT that approved it.
No, ODOT says that they turned the road over. They built it, they don't have any jurisdiction over it.
So
I'm trying to tell you, I contacted everybody. I think the attorney has to answer that when you're asking me.
Yeah, I understand that you contacted them. I'm trying to clarify because it says that they had approved
So
that
this one's
access.
kind of going in circles here. We reached out to the township, they said, at first they said they didn't see any issues. We reached out to ODOT, they didn't say there's any issues. Then the township said, this isn't our road, this is the village's road. So I talked to Taylor about this. I believe this is the village's road.
We don't have a history of maintaining it. Jerome Township plows that portion of the road. So we would have to do more research into that, but that is as much as I know about jurisdictional control of that portion of that street.
Okay. All right, I will go ahead and open us up to deliberate then as a commission. Just keep in mind that we do need to keep to what was brought to us at the public hearing, as well as the feedback in response to our questions out of that public hearing.
I mean, so I'll renew, my concerns about, number one, it's in the comprehensive use plan, it's designated as employment center. This does not fit within that designation in any way, shape, or form. I will also reference the attorney's letter here that I was, reading over as we were talking. I'm really uncomfortable with allowing somebody to, run private sewer and water. We haven't allowed it with any other development. They're saying that they've, talked to Paul and they've talked to basically our legal counsel and said that there's, it's permissible in whatever way, in whatever manner, but I'm not comfortable with it. We've required every other developer to do it. They're just saying, hey, when you bring the water to us, then we'll connect to it. And we've always required the developers to get their own lines to the area. The development out on 161 that's ongoing now, the MI development, I mean, they had to bore underneath the Big Darby to get water and sewer there at a tremendous expense. So to allow them to go private doesn't make sense to me. If we were, for whatever reason, if it's a capacity issue, which, Taylor could probably answer, but if it was a capacity issue, You know, I guess maybe I would be willing to listen to, you know, some sort of a proposal for that, meaning they could pay up front or at some point an agreement to pay for the water lines to be extended, the sewer lines to be extended once the, you know, the sewer capacity was sufficient, you know, but just to wait until we get it to them doesn't sit well with me. Some of the other things that he addressed in the comprehensive plan notations here, you know, they're talking about how, you know, things have changed, and he's basically saying that our comprehensive plan is out of date, and that there's no demand for this type, or for the type of properties that are supposed to be in that use, which is employment center. He said there's basically no demand for that. I mean, let's be real. Jerome Township just recently entered into an agreement to have Ohio Health construct an urgent care center at 42 and 33. That's pretty close, and that fits a lot more in line with what employment center is geared towards. This industrial use that they're proposing does not fit into it at all. So, you know, to say that there's no demand for it is, I mean, in my opinion, kind of a cop-out to say that it's just not, you know, that the demand is non-existent, and you know, the demand for standard office park is non-existent. And this is saying that the property history proves that. Well, I disagree. I think some other concerns that, you know, we've talked about obviously is truck traffic. Ironically, before I came here, I was going out towards Dublin on 161, and there was about 4 cement trucks that passed me, not from this particular company, but, you know, coming towards me. And it's, you know, I think to myself, I mean, is that what, you know, the best use of this property is to see these trucks coming out in close proximity to the park? You know, obviously park traffic, the truck traffic's not gonna be going in front of the park, it's gonna be on 42, but there's a lot of park traffic that comes in off of 42, so that's gonna impact, you know, that traffic, you know, regardless of how we look at it. You know, we talked last meeting about, you know, the number of trucks that will be going down 42 south to 161 and then east on 161 straight through the uptown, you know, where we're trying to make, you know, lots of improvements there, you know, streetscape projects. And again, I think it's a real hard fit. It's a hard sell for, you know, for me to, you know, kind of wrap my head around the traffic that's being generated. And then, you know, obviously, you know, I think the homeowner back there on Rickard Road, I think mentioned, you know, the fact that the park is used in a certain manner right now, such as a campground. And obviously for recreation, you know, there's walking paths out there, there are ball fields, there's a swimming pool, and you wonder about the impact that those things have, or, you know, how those things will be impacted or affected by the noise, the noise that's generated, you know, the dust that may fly. And then obviously the environmental impacts, which, I mean, obviously they've said that they can comply with, and they'll comply with EPA standards. But it's not just the standards that the EPA, you know, exert in terms of water quality and protection and watersheds and all that, but the environmental concerns from the noise and the dust and the dirt and the traffic in general. I mean, these are the things that we've talked about, you know, since day one. I've, you know, brought these things every time that we've talked about it. And I mean, while I appreciate, and I said at the last meeting, I appreciate, you know, the designs that have come out. I think that, you know, the designs are pretty nice. They're visually pleasing. You know, they've talked about, you know, that being 700 feet off the roadway. 700 feet sounds like a long distance, right? I mean, if we just sit here and say, man, 700 feet away, that's a long distance. With a facility the size of this, I mean, we're talking about the silos or the towers, basically extending 80 foot into the air. There's 2 of them. That's, the structure for the plant itself is near that, probably 65 feet, I'm guessing by the looks of it, if it's to scale. So it's not gonna be hard to see this plant from the road. It's gonna be, very visible. Again, some of my concerns, I mean, this is the entranceway into Plain City, and it's like, this is gonna be the first thing that you see when you cross the Big Darby, and that's gonna be like our welcome to Plain City, is concrete trucks making their way off of Rickard Road onto 42 going north or south, probably impeding the flow of traffic at times. And then, obviously the visual that you're gonna get by looking at it. All those things, concern me. It's obviously not zoned for it. The future doesn't call for it to be zoned that way. We're going through a zoning code rewrite. In the zoning code rewrite, the maps are kind of, in draft, but they're kind of set, and they're kind of set along the lines of the comprehensive plan, and they just don't match up. And those are my, my big concerns with the whole plan. In a nutshell.
No, I would reiterate what Lieutenant's saying about, the environmental impact is, yes, you have your EPA standards, but then we're seeing the pressure of increasing those standards to a higher level when it comes to development, and that is the pressure that we are receiving, is how can we do better along the Darby. And my concerns would be the safety of the traffic along. I mean, you're still going about 50 miles per hour right there by North Chillicothe, and you can't, it's hard for some of those semi trucks to slow down, and you have that amount of trucks per hour turning out onto 42 either way. It just seems like a very lot of accidents waiting to happen.
Thank
You
you.
know, another thing, I'm sorry, another thing, I kind of looked, the applicants have talked about their other properties, that they have around the area, Bellefontaine, Marysville, Huntsville. And while I didn't take a field trip to any of those places, I did look, through Google Maps, and all of those areas, the Marysville one is directly across the street from the Honda plant, an industrial area. Kind of makes sense. The one in Huntsville is kind of out in the country. It's not really near anything else. It's near a quarry, but not near anything else. The one in Bellefontaine, it's south of town. It's not in the area of the city. And this, is right on the edge of what we envision as that employment center, that entryway, that gateway into Plain City, and that property around there. It just doesn't seem real consistent with what our visions have been, what the planners for the comprehensive plan had envisioned for that area, and really for what fits around it. It just doesn't seem consistent with any of that. It's definitely in an industrial use, and it seems, that there is an industrial area somewhere that's, more suitable or conducive to this type of business.
Yeah, I was gonna say, to me, there's kind of two terms of environmental impacts here. There's the EPA environmental impacts that, they say they're gonna be able to meet, which would be important if it went in there, but there's also kind of the environment of Plain City. And I don't know, I think that's gonna have a major impact if we put this sort of a plant here as well. And I don't know that that's the impact that we wanna make at that point. Concrete is definitely a material that we're gonna need a lot more of, as you see. So I think that there's room for it potentially somewhere, but I don't know that this is the perfect location for it.
I've been trying to, much like you, I've been looking at Google Maps, and then just on some of my travels flying around looking at different concrete plants and kind of their locations. I know over on the east side of Columbus, there's quite a few, but almost all of them are kind of more of an industrial environment. There have been very few I've seen that have been in neighborhoods. I was trying to look over the New Albany area because there's a lot of construction going in there with different warehousing in different buildings on that side of town, and really didn't see any that were like near a community. And that's my biggest concern is the other day just driving up on 42, just kind of that natural curve of the road, it's looking square at that property. It's kind of like a cornerstone that would be, to me, prime frontage for any business to be going in there. And on the letter that we got, or the memo, they talked about really the water and sewer, if they had to extend it the 2,600 feet to connect, just being a deal breaker. I agree. I mean, that's just, it would be a ridiculous amount for a company in the front. Well, what about any other business that would look to go in there? We don't have anything in there. So my thought is, if we had the grocery store everybody talks about, or the daycare, I mean, they wouldn't, just for the pure cost of getting water and sewer, it's just not set to be developed. So to sit there and say this has been undeveloped for so long and this is the only thing to go in there, well, we don't have any services to offer anybody to go in there. I think that's part of the struggle is, we can't have anything go in there because we don't have anything going to them. It's kind of a double-edged sword with that. So we got to develop it, but there's nothing in there, it'd be kind of a plug and play for a business to go in there.
Well, yeah, and we've kind of talked about that. I mean, it's always been the responsibility of the developer to get the lines there. I mean, to provide the infrastructure to get it there, and to completely, cut that off, right at the knees and say, essentially it's going to quash the project. We're not going to do it. We'll connect when you get it to us. I mean, it doesn't seem very responsible. And I don't think it would be responsible for us to allow that when we've demanded it out of other developers. We've talked about, cost recovery for them. I mean, if they extend the lines, they've got the ability then to cost recover through future development. So I understand that there's a huge onus that goes on to them, by extending those lines. But I don't know. My experience since I've been on planning and zoning is the developer gets the water there. There was no water at the project behind us over here. They extended lines all the way over to Lafayette Plain City Road and Perry Pike. Same thing, like I already said about the Big Darby. I mean, you had to bore underneath to get there, and those projects certainly aren't cheap either. I don't know. It just no part of that sits well with me.
And I think I appreciate and echo a lot of the sentiments I'm hearing from you guys, and same things we've talked about over the last couple months. I think we touched on all of the major points and concerns that we've had as a commission, and I don't think I have anything else to add to the commentary that each of you have provided. Yeah, I mean, we have the tax revenue here. It'd be nice to get that. Some of the projections we have are just projections. When you run it for year 1 to year 2 of increasing that number, that's not these aren't guaranteed numbers that they'll.
Are you talking about in terms of the tax revenue that would be
the
generated?
Tax revenue for the jobs that they listed?
Yeah, and like I mentioned the urgent care that that's going to be constructed. I mean, I really see no reason that type of a project couldn't be right there in that spot. I mean, unfortunately, they decided to build that in Jerome Township. Good for them. But to me, it's that type of project that you look for. And when you talk about employment center, and then you look at the definition of the comprehensive plan, and then you talk about, okay, well, it's creating jobs. I mean, the concrete plant will create jobs to the tune of 25. Generating, over, I think they said about $1.7 million in revenues for them, which generates or translates into about $27,000 in taxes for us. But I gotta believe a project like the urgent care, and I don't know that, I don't know all the numbers that went with that, but, my guess is that, that they have at least the same number of employees, if not more, and probably a higher, generating tax revenue. Again, that's not what's being proposed here, but I know that, calls are made all day, every day, for people looking for different things for their projects. And, while that doesn't, that's not in front of us tonight, maybe it will be in the future if, we stick to what the comprehensive plan is, and if we stick to what, our vision and what I believe the vision of the comprehensive planners were. If we stick to that, hopefully that's, what comes down the road.
Well,
For us.
in our houses, our roofs are increasing dramatically, so there's gonna definitely be need for things like, the healthcare facilities and the business park. So I think that's why the comprehensive plan is in place, to protect us from when that future growth happens.
And I think there's a lot of guidance in the plan, and I think even our zoning referencing that everything's kind of drives using that comprehensive plan. So, some of the stuff of, well, they're not building offices right now because COVID restrictions. Well, we're, 1 or 2 years in that. I know some businesses are, we talked about are booming and adding, and some aren't. We just don't know. We're, a year or so coming out of stuff, and who knows what the changes will be. And
Right.
there may be more of a demand for maybe a smaller type offices instead of large complexes. And who knows what's coming out this direction.
Yeah, I mean, if it was already zoned for it, obviously we wouldn't be having this discussion. We'd be looking at plans to, to approve. It's not zoned for this. They're asking for a rezoning. And I think, it's our responsibility to, really weigh all the concerns that we just had versus the benefits of the project itself, and decide if it's the right project to make a rezoning for. And it seems to me, at least from my standpoint, that the cons kind of outweigh the pros at this point. So,
Move to vote.
yeah, so if this is all the comment that we have to share, then, I would motion that we deny the application to rezone.
Just to clarify real quick, Taylor, for everyone, if we do make the motion, we are voting yay or nay on the motion itself, right?
Yes, you're voting whether you agree or not with the motion
Yes.
to deny the application.
Okay. Everyone clear with that? Okay. I would second that motion.
Mr. Adler,
Yes.
Mayor Carney,
Yes.
Mr. Jaskowitz,
Yes.
Mr. Harriman,
Yes.
Mr. Swank.
Yes.
Thank you. So that will close out the old business portion. We do have public comment on here. Anyone who's here is more than welcome to provide comment. Again, if you can give your name and address when you come up for comment. Obviously, we can't consider it for the application we just voted on, but the applicant does have the opportunity, if they'd like, to go before council, even with us not making a recommendation in their favor. And so any commentary that we receive could be included if they choose to go before council.
And furthermore, the mayor and several council members are here, so they're gonna hear your word. So if you have something to say, they'll obviously be able to take it back with them.
If you could please stand and give your name and address.
Thank you. My name is Steve Simonetti. I am not the owner of property directly to the south, but the owner of property directly to the south of the owner that has property directly to the south. I own about 12 acres and in contract to buy another 25 acres for the off-power development, the run off-power. We gave significant time and effort and thought in putting our community together. We took the comprehensive plan into consideration as we were told to. And I, as a developer who've done a fair amount of development over the last 20 years, always consider the value and importance of the front door of my community. What does my entrance look like? What does the side entrance look like? What's the value and importance of that? and I think Plain City needs to think about that as well, at the north entrance to the community. I agree with all the comments as they relate to dust and traffic and safety and environmental and sewer and water, but we're close to $1 million invested in our community, and I wouldn't want that at my front door. And I think that front door at 42 and 33 is going to be only magnified as development continues, as the sewer plan is developed, and I support your decision, and I hope council will do the same. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Mr. Rice?
I heard almost every one of the bullets that are on my list. One thing that I did today, I called the area north of Maine, Old North residential area. I drove it this afternoon. I found 8 or 9 properties that are being remodeled or updated. And to me, that's uplifting those homes, that's uplifting those people. And if we allow this plant, no matter how nice it looks, to go in up there, I think you're devaluing that whole residential area, old and new, and certainly the park. So, again, thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Okay, we'll go ahead and close the public comment portion. Next up, nothing for new business, so we'll move on to discussion. Ms. Brill?
Sure, so I just wanted to discuss with the commission again. I know we've been planning March 9th for a work session. I think everything is still in place if that's what we still want to endeavor towards. I touched base with our...
Do you want to pause for a minute?
Sure.
If anyone would like to leave, you're more than welcome to. You can stay for this if you'd like as well. Figured that'd be easier than you trying to talk while everyone was trickling out.
Towards that one or? Okay, so, but you're close.
I'd like to say something. How come we don't ever know what's going on in the street? We don't have no paper, unless you go on Facebook.
Especially if they help me out when we go.
One of the things that I would like to bring to council members, in this whole process, and how do you let people know that a property is in question? And you see in other communities, they have signs that says public hearing on this date and everything. So we have to put it through an ordinance, but I'm going to be bringing that topic of that, and we're creating a communications committee to reach out and talk, but we're trying to do better about how do you get everybody and really tell.
You still have a lot of old people in this village that don't do internet.
Yes.
So I would like to ask, what, do you have any ideas or suggestions for how? Yeah.
Some thought process that I had, I'm sorry, Lieutenant, to cut you off, but
No.
we do put out a quarterly newsletter through email, but I would like to condense it into a paper copy where we can have it up at the Dutchman, at the hardware store, at locations where people can pick up. So it's just a matter of getting it created like once it is, so that way people can pick it up and read it. Or maybe even have it out here as
And then
an
the
option.
public hearings are all listed in local newspapers as well, right?
Yep, anytime we have a public hearing, it's published in the Marysville Tribune.
You have to leave one of those open.
Yeah, we have to.
Okay, I was just concerned about that.
But no, we appreciate,
Yeah.
yes, because that is an ongoing conversation. It's like, how do you get the word out these days? And whether it's through like the sign in the property, or even, we've explored an electronic sign for the municipal building, but as you drive by, you can see like important info. They're
That
almost,
sign uptown, do you ever put anything on
we
that sign?
do, but that costs a lot to
Okay.
every slat that you create. But this would be for like out front but it's almost close to 30,000 to have like a stone sign with the board on it.
Which still would require you to drive by our building.
Yes.
So, yeah, I mean, yeah, honestly, if you have any ideas, I mean, I understand exactly what you're saying, I mean, but the Madison Press used to be delivered to our homes on Saturdays or whatever, and that doesn't happen anymore. You can get, the Marysville Journal Tribune if you go to the store and buy it, and then, you can look at those public notices. Short of that, I mean, we've struggled with, how do we get the word out to people and reach as many people as you can. I understand your concerns. I mean, obviously the easiest, the least expensive, the most at your fingertips method is our website, our social media, the village newsletter that gets emailed out. I understand your concerns about, some of the older population that may not have the means or the desire to go to those things. But how do we connect with those? I mean, obviously we can't start a newspaper. We, and then, the expense of mailing things out. I mean, there's meetings in this building 3 nights minimum every week about stuff that goes on in the village, whether it's the Parks Committee, the Planning and Zoning, Board of Zoning Appeals, Council, work sessions. I mean, there's stuff regularly every week. So, to put out a mailing for each one of those would be, it would be cost prohibitive for one. But we also recognize the need to be able to connect.
Maybe
So
even just post it, even a lot of people come and pay their water bills.
yeah, and there is
print everything. So I know that the format.
and we have a board out there.
We do.
So but again, it requires somebody to come here and to. But that's part of the thing. I mean, as residents, we have to take those steps to be informed. And unfortunately, like the news, that if you're watching Channel 4, 6, or 10, you're getting all the national news, but you're not getting news from Plain City. And that's the way it is. So when you want more specific information, you kind of have to seek it. And, we're certainly open. Like she said, we're looking at a communications committee to try to find ways to help push that information out to better inform the residents. I mean, we want people involved. It's your community.
But I think that in the short term, we can put together, like, it may not be pretty, but it'll be like a facts information sheet that we could update and have here in the entryway, and then also up at the library or the Der Dutchman, or just so people can be informed and read. So I'll work on that.
Okay.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thanks. Yeah, maybe just like the monthly,
Monthly
because a monthly, because you'll know
Calendar.
basically what
Yeah.
comes up to BZA or plan zoning. Just hey, March 1st, just post something just on the bulletin board.
Well, yeah, but a
You know.
lot of
Yeah.
times, if you're talking about BZA specifically, you don't know until 10 days.
Yeah, whatever.
before.
Yeah,
I think we
whatever.
get to let some of this crew sitting around the room here figure that one out.
Yeah.
We're going to communicate everything.
Right.
As much as I'd love to account for every other committee,
Thank you, Mr.
I don't
Adler.
think I want to right now.
So, anyways, you were saying.
Yes, so back to the work
Work
session
session.
discussion. Just wanted to inform the committee kind of where we stand logistically for that. The plan right now is to have our consultant come for the zoning code to give kind of an introduction to that code, how to navigate it, how it works, what we've drafted up this far, with the steering committee kind of be there as well to kind of give their support to what we have. During that meeting, the consultant will be there to answer any questions that you have, and just kind of introduce everybody to the code. I think that's a better way of doing it rather than entering into a public hearing before you've even seen the code. It's also a great way, because we live stream these meetings, to allow the public to have an introduction to that as well. Posting the code, it's a very dense document. It doesn't have the appeal that the comp plan has. There's less pictures, it's a lot more legal text. So we're trying to navigate a way to make sure that people know how to navigate it and just read it without having to spend their evening through a 100-page document that may not make a lot of sense or be applicable to their everyday lives. So that's essentially what we're doing and what we're planning for. So we'll have our consultant there to go over the code. I'm going to reach out to the BIA, which represents all of the builders kind of in the central Ohio area, and see if any developers want to come, because I thought it was perfect to dovetail that conversation into items that, how do we shape more Plain City, things we can add to our code, things that maybe we have to work at another avenue to achieve. But I thought it was all a great
What date was it?
March 9th,
March
March
9th.
9th.
6:30 PM.
So I know part of what we discussed as well is at that point, and I don't think at this point we have anything anticipated for our meeting the following week. I think we bounced around either potentially moving it to that time or canceling our meeting if we don't have anything on the agenda the following week. Do we have anything that's coming down the pipeline there, or which route would we prefer to go?
I don't have anything right now that's in between. It doesn't mean that somebody couldn't submit something that doesn't require a 30-day notice. And then I wouldn't know until like 20-ish days beforehand. But I wanted to make sure that we could publish this information out and enough ahead of time so everybody can plan for that.
Okay.
So if we don't end up having that meeting, our regular standing meeting, we would just go ahead and cancel it. And
Okay.
then we would just convene one time that month. It would just be a week early.
Yeah, and I think that's fine. I just wanted to make sure we were on the same page because we talked about maybe sliding that the following week.
So I know we talked about, obviously, this work session. What's gonna be the responsibility or the role for planning and zoning as it relates to that? And I guess what I mean is, obviously there's been a steering committee that's worked through the zoning code and they got to the point that it's at. And you're still finalizing and tweaking and whatever. But what will our responsibility be as planning and zoning? I mean, is it just to see it and to know that it exists and to try to understand it? Or is it do we recommend something?
So ultimately, the code, when we're finalized and have the final draft, it'll come to you guys, you'll hold a public hearing and make a recommendation to council, who will ultimately pass the ordinance to affect the new zoning code. So essentially, you are going to be rendering a decision on that and making a recommendation, but before you're put in that position, it's good to introduce that, get you comfortable, let you ask questions, and we can keep that dialogue going, so we can continue making tweaks before that document gets to you.
And for the rest of us, what kind of a timeline are we looking at in terms of getting to that point?
Sure, so we still have a couple sections that we're working through, namely the sign code and subdivision regulations. Those are probably our two outstanding sections right now that need the most work. Other than that, it all depends on the feedback and how many tweaks we have to make, and that will affect the timeline. If there are not very many, we're in a good position to get that advertised for public hearing within the next couple months. If there are substantial tweaks in feedback, then it might take us a little bit longer. But again, it's an ever evolving process. So again, it could be 2 months, it could be as long as 6, because.
So
just
realistically,
don't know how
best case scenario would be, a May or a June meeting before we would be expected to vote on. I mean, if we're in February, you're talking at least a couple of months to get to that point. So you're talking March, April, and then May would be probably the soonest.
I would say middle to late spring would probably be best case scenario to work through, because we know there's gonna be comments to it, we're gonna have to make tweaks. I mean, ideally, everybody would be on board with everything and agree and like how it's written, but that's probably not gonna be the nature of how that goes. So there will be some additional revisions, and there's just some turnaround time depending on how in-depth those get.
Perfect. So the public comment portion of it, so it would come to us, we'd have the hearing open for public comment, and then it would get presented to, we pass it, then it would go up to council, and then there'd be a public portion for council to have with it. So there'll be 2 public comment periods for it?
Correct.
Okay.
I don't have any concerns with any of that.
Sounds good.
And then if there are any comments or concerns that come to your mind and essentially, what we should be forming, I know a lot of the questions came up about expectations for residential development. Any of those ideas come to your mind and you need to form them on an agenda, so we make sure we can hit all of those points, feel free to send me emails so we can keep in touch, and just to make sure that we have actionable items in that meeting. I just want to make sure that we're hitting on all of your concerns ahead of time and can get that out, have a good conversation.
Sounds perfect.
That's all I have.
Anyone else have anything?
I don't.
All right, adjourned.